I never thought the sharpest wound would come not from strangers, but from the people I had sacrificed everything for. The moment is still etched in me as if carved by a knife. I stood in the living room of my own house, the phone still pressed to my ear, when my daughter-in-law, Lena, turned to me with a smile colder than steel and said, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." 4 words that struck harder than any physical blow. Special people. After 3 years of paying their rent, filling their refrigerator, buying every stick of furniture in their home, I was not special. I was invisible. Max, my only son, avoided my eyes while Lena lounged on the sofa. I had bought her pale pink dress for the wedding, chosen by me, still hanging useless in my closet. I had spent weeks preparing. I had bought new shoes, saved $1,000 to give as a wedding gift, even called my sister Diana in Chicago to share the good news. I had scrubbed every corner of my house, dreaming they might return after the ceremony to celebrate with me. And all of it crumbled with that smirk and those words. They had lied. It wasn't some intimate courthouse affair. I saw the photos on social media, Lena's parents beaming beside the bride and groom, her siblings raising champagne glasses, Lena radiant in a gown I had unknowingly helped pay for when she begged me for $800 the month before. There they were all smiling, while the woman who had carried Max for 9 months, who had raised him alone after his father died, who had emptied her savings to support him through every struggle, was deliberately shut out. For days, I moved through my routines like a ghost. Then, exactly 1 week after that humiliation, the phone rang again. This time, it was Lena, her voice trembling instead of triumphant. "Renate, the rent is overdue. The landlord says if we don't pay this week, we'll be kicked out. You forgot to make the transfer." My hand tightened around the phone. For 3 years, I had raced to the bank every month to transfer $500 so they would never face this exact problem. I had eaten beans and rice so they could enjoy steak. I had given up vacations, hobbies, even small comforts so they could live comfortably. And now, after denying me the honor of attending my own son's wedding, Lena had the audacity to ask me for more. I let the silence stretch until she stammered, "Renate, are you there?" Then I said, with a calm that surprised me, "Didn't I warn you? I only help special people." The silence that followed was so heavy, I could hear my heart beat. For the first time in years, she was the one trembling, not me. That night, I sat on my bed and let the tears fall. But they were not tears of grief. They were tears of fury, of decades of swallowed humiliation, of years of being treated as a wallet with legs. I thought of the $33,400 I had spent on them in just 3 years. Rent, food gifts, medical emergencies, car loans, furniture, every penny taken from the inheritance my late husband had left me so I could grow old in peace. $33,400, and what did I receive in return? Exclusion. Disrespect. Lies. The next morning, when I looked in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. My eyes were tired, yes, but there was something new in them, a hardness, a glint of resolve that had been buried under years of obedience. For the first time in decades, I brewed my coffee without wondering whether Max would call. I didn't glance at my phone, hoping for an apology that would never come. I thought only of myself. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had planned gifts and calculated rent transfers, and this time I opened my bank statements. I wanted to see the damage in black and white. Line after line showed the proof of my foolish devotion. When the phone rang, Max's name glowing on the screen, I didn't rush to answer. When it rang again, minutes later, Lena's number flashing, I ignored it. Even when Max sent a desperate message, "Mom, please answer." "We need to talk." I pressed delete without replying. My silence was my first act of rebellion, and it felt like breathing fresh air after years in a sealed room. By 2:00 p.m., I walked outside for the first time in months without any errand connected to them. Not the bank, not the grocery store, not the pharmacy. Just a walk for myself. I passed the park where I had once pushed Max on swings, remembering his boyish arms clutching me, telling me I was the best mother in the world. How had that child grown into a man who measured my worth only in dollar signs? Somewhere along the way, I had mistaken money for love, and it had cost me not only my savings, but my dignity. I reached the bank, the place where I had drained myself dry for them month after month. Mr. Klein, the manager, knew me well. He had processed every transfer to Max and Lena, and now he looked surprised when I asked to cancel them all. "Are you sure Mrs. Richter did something happen?" His concern was more genuine than anything I had heard from Max in years. What happened, I told him, is that I finally opened my eyes. When I walked out with the cancellation papers in hand, I felt lighter, as though a mountain had been lifted off my back. My money was mine again. My life was mine again. And I knew then that Max and Lena would not take this quietly. The war had only begun. I arrived home just before 4:30 p.m. with my new resolve folded in my purse like a court order. 3 cars lined my curb, Max's, Lena's, and a glossy sedan I didn't recognize. Through the front window, I saw motion in my dining room. My heart spiked, but I turned the key anyway. There they were, Max on my sofa, Lena pacing, and a gray-suited stranger shuffling my papers as if my life were a file cabinet. "What is happening here?" I asked, and it was startling how steady my voice sounded. All 3 spun, as if I were the intruder. "Renat, thank goodness," Lena said, with that silken tone she wore like perfume. "This is Dr. Fisher from a family law firm. He's here to help with your situation." My fingers closed around the back of a chair. My situation. Max cleared his throat. "Mom, you canceled the transfers, and you're not answering calls. We're worried. You've been off." Dr. Fisher stepped forward, hand extended, smile practiced. "A temporary power of attorney can relieve the stress of decisions, only until you feel better." I didn't take his hand. I gathered my papers from the table and tucked them under my arm. "Those are my private documents. You had no right." Lena's eyes shone a little too brightly. "Renat, sweetheart, we see signs of confusion, forgetting obligations, sudden paranoia." "At your age, I am not confused," I said, and the words landed with a clean, ringing finality. "I am done being used. All of you will leave my house. Now." The gray suit slipped, and Dr. Fisher's chin stiffened. "Mrs. Richter, your children can petition the court if you're making irrational financial choices. This is compassionate oversight, not control." An ugly little laugh escaped me. "You mean the oversight that ensures my money remains your monthly salary? The oversight that calls me insane for deciding my money is mine?" Lena's tears arrived on cue. "We can't pay rent without you, Renate. We planned our life around your support. You can't cut us off overnight. Watch me." Dr. Fisher placed a folder on the table as if laying a trap. "Just sign here. It will smooth the transition." I lifted the folder, dropped it into the kitchen trash can, and pressed the pedal until cardboard and brass clasp disappeared beneath coffee grounds. "The only transition happening tonight is the one where you walk out my door." Max's temper flashed the way it had when he was 10, and the coach benched him. "This will end badly for you. You'll be alone when you really need someone." I felt the grief flare and pass, leaving steel. "I have been alone for years, Max. I just didn't admit it. Out." They went, wounded pride wrapped in expensive fabric. When the latch clicked, the silence felt like a cathedral. I slept little. At 6:10 a.m., dressed and clear-eyed, I drove to see Mr. Weber, the estate attorney, who had handled my late husband's will. He listened without interruption as I laid out $33,400 of generosity and a single afternoon of menace in my own home. "Mrs. Richter," he said at last, voice cool and fierce, "what they attempted is elder financial abuse. We'll document everything, change your will, secure your accounts, and create a paper wall no grifter can scale." By 10:45 a.m., we had a plan: revoke every automatic payment, restrict access, add dual authentication notes to my banks, draft a letter warning Max and Lena that all contact must go through counsel, and file incident reports regarding the unauthorized entry and attempted coercion. I left with a folder thicker than the one Dr. Fisher had waved and far more powerful. The rest of the day, I turned that plan into locks and light. At the hardware store, Mr. Summer raised his brows when I asked for the best deadbolts. "Another emergency for your boy." "No," I said, and it tasted like freedom. For me. His son, Ethan, scheduled a full security system for the next morning: cameras, lights, alerts to the police if a door opened without a code. As the receipt printed my phone, lit with unknown numbers. I let each call die. When one finally got through, Lena's voice slid out, honeyed and breathless. "Renate, let's make this right. A special dinner to celebrate with you at your house. We'll cook like we used to." "How much rent do you owe?" I asked. The pause was answer enough. 2 months, she whispered. $1,000. "Do you miss me or my money?" "Both," she said, honesty surprising us both. "If I'm so important," I asked, "why wasn't I important enough to witness your vows?" There was no answer for that. I ended the call and blocked the number. That afternoon, I reclaimed smaller parts of myself money never touches. I sat in the salon while Cynthia brushed warm light into my hair, filed my nails into half moons, and massaged the ache from my hands. "You look 10 years younger," she said when she spun the chair. "No," I told her, smiling at the woman in the mirror. "I look 10 pounds lighter. The weight was never on my body." I drove home to find a cup of coffee waiting on my porch steps in the hands of a woman with kind eyes. "I'm Eleanor Brooks, your neighbor," she said. "I heard raised voices yesterday. Are you all right?" 2 hours later, coffee gone cold between us. Eleanor knew everything. "I did this with my daughter 5 years ago," she said. "Cut off the money. I thought guilt would kill me. It didn't. It taught us both who we were." "Do you think Max will ever understand, maybe?" "Maybe not," she said gently. "But your job isn't to hold his understanding open like a door. Your job is to keep yourself safe while you learn to enjoy your life." That night, I slept from 10:15 p.m. to 5:50 a.m. without waking once. At 8 a.m., Ethan installed cameras that stitched my porch driveway and back garden into a single, vigilant grid. As he mounted the last lens, my phone buzzed again and again, unknown numbers, then block, then silence. I left my phone on the counter and dialed Chicago instead. Sister Diana said, laughter and relief in the same breath. "Tell me you've finally come to your senses." I told her everything. She listened, then exhaled. "Renate, it was time. Max didn't talk about you like a son talks about a mother. It was always what you bought, what you paid. Lena used to say, 'When Renate is gone, we'll renovate.' They were planning for your absence while you were planning their comfort." I stood at the window, watching the camera's tiny blue eye wink to life. For years, I had bought my way into a family that never sold love. Now, I was buying something they could never give me: my peace. At 2:15 p.m., I pulled into the cemetery parking lot with a bouquet of fresh lilies. I hadn't visited Robert's grave in months, always distracted by a so-called emergency for Max or Lena. The marble headstone was streaked with pollen, the grass a little too long, and guilt pricked me as I knelt down. "Robert," I whispered, pressing the flowers against the earth. "I think I've lost our boy. Or maybe I never had him?" I've spent $33,400 trying to buy love that never came. The breeze stirred as if in answer, and I let myself believe, if only for a moment, that Robert was listening. I stayed there until nearly 4 p.m., speaking all the words I had swallowed for years. When I drove home, 3 cars blocked my curb again. The cameras showed Max and Lena with 2 strangers animated pointing at my door. I didn't get out. Instead, I called Mr. Weber. "Stay in your car," he instructed. "I requested a temporary restraining order yesterday. The police are on their way." 2 patrol cars arrived within minutes. From the driver's seat, I watched the officers confront my son, his jaw tight, his gestures wild, while Lena dabbed at dry eyes. When an officer approached me, he said, "Ma'am, they'll be leaving. You're safe." Max shouted across the street as he climbed into his car. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't call the police on your own family." My reply was calm. "Family doesn't break into my house, Max. Family doesn't try to steal my money." Lena shrieked. "You'll regret this. You can't abandon us." Mr. Weber's voice cut clean through the chaos. "Any future communication must come through my office. Step foot on this property again, and it becomes criminal trespass." That night, Eleanor invited me to dinner. Her daughter was visiting, and I watched them cook side by side, laughing about recipes and teasing each other about who chopped onions better. The ease between them felt like a glimpse into a life I'd never known. "I wanted that with Max," I confessed, sipping warm soup. "Maybe you'll have it someday," Eleanor said. "But only if he learns you're not his bank account. You're his mother." I went to bed at 10:00 p.m., and for the first time, I dreamed not of Max's needs, but of my own future. Days passed quietly. The cameras recorded Max and Lena circling the block, sometimes parking for 10 minutes before driving off. Each time I logged the date and time. "Every entry strengthens our case," Mr. Weber told me. "Persistence will hang them with their own rope." On Friday morning, at 9:40 a.m., the doorbell rang. The cameras showed a young woman in a neat suit with a folder. "Good morning, Mrs. Richter," she said when I opened the door. "I'm Mrs. Schmidt from the Office of Senior Services. We received a report that you may be at risk. I need to conduct a wellness check." My stomach dropped. They had escalated, no longer just threats now, government intervention. "May I see your ID?" She showed me official seal gleaming. "Can I come in?" Reluctantly, I let her. She sat with her form and began. "We were told you've made sudden financial changes, cut off family, installed excessive security, and refused help. These may be signs of paranoia or mental decline." Every word dripped with Lena's influence. "Mrs. Schmidt, I said I want my lawyer here before answering anything." She pushed back. "This isn't legal, it's wellness. If you have nothing to hide, why not cooperate?" My spine stiffened. "I will wait for my lawyer." Within 20 minutes, Mr. Weber arrived, all business. "Do you have a court order?" he asked. "No," she admitted. He placed my folder on the table. "Here are records of financial abuse. $33,400 drained by her son and daughter-in-law. Here are reports of unauthorized entry, coercion, and threats. If anyone here needs investigating, it's not my client." Mrs. Schmidt's tone softened. "Mrs. Richter, do you handle your own finances?" I nodded. "Would you like to see my tax returns? My investments? They're current. I drive, I cook, I pay my bills. I have no prescriptions other than vitamins. I live independently." Mr. Weber added, "She also underwent a full medical evaluation 2 weeks ago. Results excellent mental health." After a long pause, Mrs. Schmidt closed her folder. "I see no evidence of risk. I'll close the case." When she left, relief washed over me, but so did fear. Max and Lena had fabricated witnesses, manipulated documents, and now tried to weaponize social services. They weren't stopping. They were cornered animals, and cornered animals bite. That evening, Eleanor arrived with 3 friends from her garden club, women in their 70s and 80s, with eyes that had seen too much. Over tea, we traded stories. Maria had cut off a brother who drained her pension. Carmen had disinherited a daughter who only called during tax season. Alfreda, 80, and sharp, leaned forward. Renate, true love can't be bought. If you had to pay for it, it wasn't real. The words struck me like scripture. For years, I had mistaken transactions for affection. Now I knew better. Later, alone in my garden under the stars, I realized something vital. I wasn't just fighting to keep my money. I was fighting for my dignity, my freedom, and the truth that family without love is only a word. And I vowed, as the night air cooled around me, that no courtroom and no manipulator would strip me of that truth. 3 weeks later, the summons came. At 8:15 a.m., Mr. Weber arrived at my door holding a thick envelope. "Renate," he said gravely. "Max and Lena filed a formal incompetence petition, family court Judge Miller presiding." My knees wavered as I sat on the sofa. It wasn't a threat anymore, it was real. They wanted the law to declare me unfit to hand them the keys to my bank account, my home, my life. "What evidence do they have?" I asked. Mr. Weber pulled out a list. 3 witnesses, Lena, your neighbor, Mr. Davis, and your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Plus, they've attached unpaid medical bills and claims that you hoard medication. They even note your refusal to undergo Dr. Lehman's evaluation as proof of decline. "That's a lie," I whispered. "I don't owe a cent. I take vitamins, not prescriptions." "I know," Mr. Weber said. "But lies on paper look convincing until we tear them apart." That afternoon, we visited Mr. Green. His face flushed when I asked why he had signed anything against me. "Your daughter-in-law came in worried," he stammered. "I told her you only buy vitamins, but she handed me a form to confirm irregular medication habits. I thought it was for insurance, not court." He scribbled a new statement on his letterhead. "Mrs. Richter is healthy competent, no irregularities." Relief swelled in my chest. At 3:30 p.m., we knocked on Mr. Davis's door. His sneer said it all. "That woman's lost it," he barked. Installing cameras like she lives in a prison, strangers visiting at all hours, yelling at her family in the street. I explained calmly that the cameras were for protection after Max and Lena broke in. The visitors were friends, and the yelling was me defending my home. He waved me off. "Sounds crazy to me." His testimony would stand biased and shallow, but Weber whispered, "Weak witnesses crumble under cross-exam. Don't worry." 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Moore's office for my own evaluation. For 2 hours, she asked questions, ran memory tests, problem-solving tasks, and financial reasoning exercises. At the end, she smiled. "Mrs. Richter, your cognitive scores are excellent. In fact, you're sharper than many people 20 years younger. This report will demolish their claims." The garden club rallied around me. "We'll testify," Maria insisted. "We've seen how clear you are." Cynthia added, "You're stronger now than when we met you." Alfreda, wise at 80, squeezed my hand. "Renate, they may want to bury you under lies, but truth has deeper roots." Their support was an anchor when my nights threatened to sink me. The trial date loomed. On the morning of I rose at 6:00 a.m., slipped into a crisp black suit, and stared into the mirror. For decades, I had been the woman who bent, who gave, who yielded. Today, I would be something else entirely. By 9:00 a.m., I stood in the courthouse hallway. Max in a new navy suit avoided my gaze. Lena, dressed in black like a widow, stared at me with eyes as cold as glass. Their lawyer, a silver-haired man with courtroom polish, smiled as though victory was already his. The proceedings began. Their lawyer painted me as paranoid and manipulated a vulnerable old woman preyed upon by opportunistic neighbors and a greedy attorney. His voice dripped sympathy, each word twisting my independence into delusion. Then they called their witnesses. Lena wept on the stand, speaking of my supposed hostility and decline. She was like a second mother to me, she told the judge. Now she's not herself. We just want to protect her. Mr. Weber stood and asked, "When was the last time you called Mrs. Richter without asking for money?" Lena faltered. "We always talked about many things. A date, please." She stuttered. He pressed on. "Is it true you told her she wasn't special enough to be invited to your wedding?" Her face flamed. Those words were taken out of context. "What context," Mr. Weber asked, "makes it acceptable to tell your mother-in-law she is not special?" Silence hung heavy in the courtroom. Next, Max testified. He spoke of my irrational financial choices and claimed I was under manipulative influence. When asked under cross-examination how much money I had given him in 3 years, he dodged until Weber supplied the number $33,400. "Does that sound correct?" maybe Max muttered. "She was always generous." "Generous or exploited?" Weber asked. Max couldn't answer. Mr. Davis testified about my cameras and visitors. Under questioning, he admitted he had never spoken directly to me and based his claims only on what he saw from his window. Mr. Green confessed on the record that he had been misled by Lena's paperwork. Then, Dr. Moore presented her evaluation page after page of results showing I was not just competent, but thriving. Finally, it was my turn. I rose spine straight and walked to the stand. With Mr. Weber guiding gently, I told my story. The rent, the food, the gifts, the humiliations. The phrase, "only special people," the betrayal of my son, the attempted coercion in my own home. "Why did you stop supporting them?" Mrs. Richter Weber asked. "Because I finally understood," I said clearly, "that what they called love was a transaction. My money was welcome. I was not. When their lawyer tried to rattle me, I answered each question with precision. No confusion, no hesitation. My life was mine, and I told it truthfully." The judge left to deliberate. 2 hours stretched like years. At 3:15 p.m., Judge Miller returned face solemn. He reviewed the evidence, the evaluations, the testimonies. Then he said the words that unshackled me. "This court finds that Mrs. Richter is in full possession of her faculties. The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, this case shows troubling evidence of financial exploitation by the petitioners." Relief roared through me, hot and cleansing. Max and Lena stared at the floor, their lawyer already gathering papers in defeat. That evening, Eleanor hosted a gathering at my house. We toasted with tea and laughter. "Renate Alfreda said you didn't just win today. You reclaimed yourself." And she was right. The weeks after the trial felt like a rebirth. I woke up each morning at 7 a.m. to the smell of fresh coffee, not panic. The locks on my doors gleamed new, the cameras blinked quietly, and the silence of my house no longer felt heavy. It felt like peace. Max and Lena had vanished, perhaps out of shame, perhaps out of strategy, but their absence was a gift I never thought I'd receive. I began to live again. I joined Eleanor and the garden club, my hands deep in soil that gave life instead of draining it away. I dusted off my easel and began painting again. Bright flowers, stormy skies, faces filled with resilience. My sister Diana came from Chicago one weekend, and we walked through the park where I used to take Max as a child. I told her everything, and she held my hand the way only a sister can. "Renate," she whispered, "you've turned pain into power. I'm proud of you." 3 months later, I sold my old house and moved into a sunny apartment closer to the city. It was filled with light, with neighbors who stopped to chat with new friends who saw me for who I was not, for what I could give. I donated half of my savings, over $50,000, to organizations that protect elderly people from the same kind of abuse I had faced. With the rest, I traveled. I saw Paris, walked along the Seine at dusk, and thought of Robert, my late husband, knowing he would have smiled to see me free. I stood in Rome beneath the Sistine Chapel, marveling not just at the art above, but at the art of reclaiming a life below. Max and Lena never called. I heard whispers from relatives that they had moved into a smaller apartment and that Lena, for the first time, had taken a job. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never had: the value of independence and honest work. Perhaps one day Max will remember the boy who once hugged me and said I was the best mom in the world. Or perhaps not. But I no longer wait for that day. Now, when I sit on my balcony at night, I look at the stars and think of the woman I used to be. The woman who believed love had to be bought, who mistook money for belonging, who accepted humiliation in exchange for scraps of affection. That woman is gone. In her place is someone who knows that true love is never conditional, and freedom once claimed can never be surrendered. If you've listened to my story this far, thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you believe, as I do, that stories of courage and resilience can light the way for others, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Your thoughts may be the candle that helps someone else find their strength.